Okay, welcome back, Fisher people. Today is the episode that I have been alluding to since we started in episode 2, doing all the requirements that bass have to live in a body of water. I'm going to show you my easy system that I have for making decisions prior to going on the fishing trip. And it will take you a few minutes once you get the hang of it. What I've done is I've created a fishing log page that I'm going to try and make downloadable on the Exile Custom Baits Facebook page. And what you can do is you just download it and print it, or if you don't want to do that, you can just take the information off the page and create a Excel spreadsheet on your computer and just input the information prior to going and once you return. So I kept a fishing diary for probably about 10 to 12 years. And that was just for pleasure fishing and tournament fishing at the time. But it helps you in a couple of ways. What it does is once you start creating a portfolio for different lakes or dams or rivers that you fish, you can then reference that information from previous seasons based on weather and everything else that goes with that. And that'll give you a clue or a reminder in your mind for that particular time of year that you're going fishing. So we'll break it down. But how I've done it is in such a manner that it's very quick to do. But some of the information you can input before your trip, and then some of it is just reference information for after you've been. So what we're going to do is all the things that we discussed in the previous episodes now become part of this, except this is condensed and it's quick to do. So we'll go through it systematically. It's an easy thing. And as we get to each thing, we'll discuss it. So first thing on just for date, time of year, and then the lake that you're going to. So what we've done for this exercise is I've created a fictional lake because we don't want to upset anybody by breaking down their lake essentially before their fishing trip and having people invade their lake and causing unrest. So we've created a fictional lake with fictional cover in it, and we're going to break down this particular lake, and we've called it Lake X for lack of originality. So as we discussed in previous videos, the first thing that I always look at is weather preceding the fishing trip. So I've got here on my fishing log, I've gone online, I've checked my online weather, I've been watching live weather, and for the purposes of this exercise, we've made this late spring, early summer on this lake, Lake X. So I've checked my weather, and my weather for the week preceding my fishing trip is fairly stable. A weak front came through. The next thing on the list is frontal pass day, the day that the front passed on. And that's past 5 days before we are intending to go fishing. The wind for the week preceding the trip was mostly a light westerly wind. And the sunlight for the week has been mostly sunny with some patches of overcast. No rain fell in the week. So that's the weather leading up to the fishing trip. Like we discussed in the previous videos, it's very important and even critical at times that we look at that weather leading up to our trip. The next thing on the log is weather on the day. So on the day that we're going fishing on our Lake X, it's warm, stable weather. The wind, there's no wind early, and then we're getting a light west from 9 a.m. And the sunlight is moderate with patches of overcast throughout the day. No rain is forecast. Now, the next thing on the list is water temperature. And although there are some lakes where you can get a surface water temperature online, I've left it blank because it's easier for us to find that out once we get onto the lake. For people that are fishing from the bank, it's not super critical, but if you want to, you could take a floating pool thermometer and you could just tie it on the end of your fishing line and chuck it in, leave it for a few minutes, and it'll give you a surface temperature. Next thing is water clarity. Well, I've been to Lake X during the week. I took a drive past, and I saw that with the light to moderate westerlies that have been blowing the whole week, that the water is discolored, but it's not dirty. Then I went online and I looked for the food species that are present in Lake X, because I haven't had time to go down there and find out for myself in the ways that we discussed in the bass food video. So I looked online and I found out that the lake has been stocked with bluegill, craws, some or other type of minnows, and just having a look around the lake and the general vegetation around the lake and weeds and that kind of stuff, I'm guessing there's going to be some frogs in. There's pretty strong chance that there's going to be frogs at most of the lakes that we fish. Next on the list is the lures or techniques that I used. And then there's two little columns there, the lures and the lure colors. Next line down is how many fish were caught and how big they were. And then the next line down is notes. Very straightforward. I filled the columns that were applicable to fish out in this fishing log, I filled it out in probably 5 or 6 minutes. My weather homework took me 5 or 6 minutes. It's easy. The balance of the stuff that you can fill in when you get home. It's really not difficult. So what we've done is we've created our fictional lake. And on the first slide, as you will see, it's Lake X, with the wind blowing from a westerly direction across the lake. Then what I've done is I've broken up Lake X into 4 parts. Now the reason that I've done this is not a very big lake, but what I want to encourage you to do is when you're going to a lake and you've done your homework and you've decided on some potential start areas based on all the criteria that we've discussed, if it's a big lake, don't try and fish the whole lake in one day. Don't run around like a mad thing. You end up doing more running and less fishing, and that's completely counterproductive. So we've broken up Lake X into 4 parts. We're going to go through these one by one. Now, as you can see in section 1, there is Lake X is connected to another smaller pond. So if you look on section 1, you can see where I've marked it with F. There's a small brown squiggle. I have seen on my topographic map of Lake X, which is how we've got this information, that there seems to be a rock pile there. And then areas A, B, C, D, and E, that was indicated on our topographic map, was emergent weed or weed of some type. G, H, and I are areas of structure where we have some rock as indicated on our topographic map. I've indicated it in brown just for you to have a look at. And you can see, except for section F, the majority of the areas that have rock on this particular lake are where there are areas of deeper water where the contour lines are closer together. So for example, in area G, we're going from 14 foot down to 7 foot. So although it's not really what you would consider to be a point coming up into the lake, it's more of an area where you can fish it from deep to shallow or shallow to deep, depending on the day. Now, section 1 as indicated on the map, is where the area of the lake that the wind is blowing towards. So if I was fishing this lake, this is probably the area that I would start in. I have good weed beds in the shallow water that I can go and target, which are wind blown. The wind is, although it's not a strong wind, the wind is blowing into them, which will increase fish activity in those areas. And then as the day progresses and the sun climbs higher and higher, I can slide out from those shallow water areas A, B, C, D, and E, and I can start having a look around areas G, H, and I. Now, G, H, and I are all centered around an area of deeper water, and as we discussed, the deep water is the home of the fish. It's where they live, and on this particular lake, the deep water in area 1 is not far from the shallow water. So fish do not have to travel far up to the shallows to spawn and feed. The nice thing about Lake X, this is actually a real lake that I've just removed all the information from, guys. So I haven't completely made it up. Between area H and area I, there's a deep hole in the middle of the lake. And all around that deep hole, the contour lines are very close together, which means a sharply sloping bank into that deep hole. So all around that hole, once the sun has climbed higher in the sky, will be a good area to fish. And although 25 foot sounds deep, it's not deep for bass. Bass are quite happy to live at that depth. The nice thing about this particular lake is we have areas of deep water mostly very close to areas of shallow water. If you could plan a textbook lake for bass, which is kind of what I've done here, this is what it would look like. Right, let's have a look at section number 2. Section number 2 is basically just a zoomed in section of that deep water hole. I want you to pay particular attention to area A and area B. And what that is we call it a pinch point. It's where the contour lines come very close together, but it's also kind of funneling towards the deep water on area A and area B, but it's areas of deeper water going towards the deepest water. So what that would do is those would be areas that would funnel fish from the shallows to the deep. Let's look at section number 3. Okay. Section number 3 is not a wind-blown bank. In other words, section number 3 is where on the side of the lake where the wind is coming from. This would not be my chosen starting point, but because it's a small lake, it would still be an area that I go and have a look. So what we've got in section A is an area of deep water very close to shallow water. In other words, it falls away very quickly. And areas like this, we spoke about it in the food video, can be good areas when the wind is blowing into that particular bank to funnel shoals of bait fish into an area. So although the day it's not going to be one of my starting spots on the day we are going fishing, it's still an area worth looking at. And then area B, you can see that the contour lines are extremely close together. So that is a steep sloping bank sloping away to our deeper hole, which is in the middle of the lake. That would definitely be an area worth looking at if you were fishing, if your boat was in the shallow water and you were throwing into the deeper water. You would be going from, say, 6.5 foot in to 13 foot in a good long cast. That's always an area you want to have a look at. And then area C, it's basically just an area where the shallow water, the contour lines are very close together. So you're going from 1.5 foot to 10 foot in probably 2 long casts. So also a good area to have a look at. And our final area that we're going to look at on Lake X is area 4. You can see that I've marked some green lines there. That section A is basically a continuation of section A in area 3. The contour lines are nice and close together. But what we've got is on the other side of that, we've got a nice flat shallow bay, which is essentially an area, you'll see I've marked B, where you could fan cast and work through that bay area from 10 foot all the way with a good strong cast probably to 1.5 foot. So that would be a good area to fish a moving bait and see if there's any fish in there. And because we've never been to this lake anymore, there might well be emergent vegetation there, but we need to go and have a look. So that's pretty much the homework that we've done before we're going to go to this lake. Now, obviously, we need to discuss what kind of lures and stuff we're going to be using. But because we've never been there before, we can pretty much pack whatever we have into the boat and try everything when we get there. And obviously, like we always say, we'll discuss that at a later stage when we start getting into lures and techniques and stuff. One of the other things that I wanted to tell you guys about was, and I'm not affiliated to them anyway, is an app called the Deep Dive app. And as far as I know, it's only applicable in America. So for my other friends from the rest of the world, I'm sorry about this. You may well have apps in the countries that you live in which do the same thing, but this Deep Dive app, I've looked into it a little bit. It's absolutely incredible app. It's got all kinds of stuff, all kinds of information that kind of tie in exactly with what we've been speaking about now. So I encourage you to have a look at that. I've had a look at it, and obviously I can't use it where I am now, but the amount of information that's available on that app about so many different lakes in the US is incredible. So I encourage you to have a look at it if that's your thing. If you are an online person and you enjoy using apps, definitely go and have a look at that Deep Dive app. Guys, that's my system. It's not difficult. The information literally can be gathered in under an hour. So if you're planning a fishing trip for the weekend and leading up to the weekend, you've got a couple of nights, spend 10, 15 minutes a night just checking the weather, going through things, checking what kind of food occurs in the lake, that type of stuff. It really doesn't take very long. But once you put all that information together, you've got it for good. And you can store it in your fishing log. And that is just a good reference point for you the next time, the next year, in 5 years' time, when you want to go and fish that particular lake. I hope you guys have found this video helpful. I'm grateful for you all tuning in. We'll see you next time.